No hate, no hype, no fear. We are EFR, your protection from deception.
Recipients of renewed insight, we must assist others in the interpretation of ancient mystery long forgotten. Forbidden knowledge written off as fairy tale by modern skeptic, steeped in the facade of evolutionary myth. We are the new seers, long awaited for by world, fated to return for the promised unfolding of prophetic day and age, the culmination of all forbearance. We are to lead those seeking guidance in understanding to sunset, revival, renewal. Bring them to remembrance on who they are, what roles they are to play in the grand unfolding of the end of days. The kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. And I thank you for taking the time to join both Kathy and I tonight and this evening as we discuss all things esoteric and trying to help you to make sense of the illusion parading as reality. And so with that, Kathy, are you here, sister?
I am. Hello.
Hello, and thank you always for joining me and for your kindness and your friendship. It's always a pleasure to share time in this manner, in this way, coming forth to world and discussion and talking about all the things that we've covered in now 16 episodes. Time is just going by so very quickly, but I believe you have some things of interest that you wanted to discuss and bring it forth. And so I will turn it over to you and let you.
I do want to have your input on some of the
most
articles
certainly.
I'm going to bring, especially this first one. But I wanted to start with Ephesians 5:11 through 14, because so often people comment negatively on especially flat earth articles or posts, anything that we bring out about flat earth. And then they leave aside, the other dark things that we are trying to expose. And I think it's really important. Ephesians 5:11 on says, "Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, 'Awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you.'" So that's what we often do. We're exposing the darkness, and we are not going to let the evil go unshined, just exposed. Anyway, this really, really dark article has come out, and there's been a series by Michael Snyder this week. It's about this Temple of Baal in, is that how you pronounce it? Baal? In Baal, in New York City. And actually, it's New York City and London. And there are going to be other replicas in, I think he said 1,000 other cities.
Oh, wow.
Have you heard about this?
No, I have not.
Oh my!
Well, I mean, I've heard a little bit about it, but no, I've not read anything or looked in any deeper into it, though.
Well, I thought I'd read you a little bit about it, and Rob actually put out 2 videos today. One's about an hour, and another is a 2.5 hour. I listened to the first one, which it was great. But they can be found on his channel. It's Rob Skiba on YouTube. So I highly recommend those. And Michael Snyder's series of articles are on his blog, End of the American Dream. And let me read you the titles of this series, because it's really astounding what he's bringing out. The first was April 2016. The Temple of Baal will be erected in Times Square in New York City. The second, the Temple of Baal coming to New York will be followed by hundreds, more all over the world. Will a gateway be opened when the arch from the Temple of Baal is reconstructed in Times Square? April 19, Temple of Baal in New York is going up the same day the blood sacrifice to the beast begins. And then today, Happy Beltane, Temple of Baal in New York is going up just before Baal's biggest day of the year. And for people who aren't aware of this, and to bring you up to speed, the very first article gives a little bit of background history for this. And he said, I realize that the headline of this article sounds like it must be false, but it is actually completely true. The Temple of Baal, also known as the Temple of Bel, was a world-famous landmark that was located in Palmyra, Syria. In August 2015, this temple was destroyed by ISIS, and most of the world recoiled in terror at the loss of a so-called cultural heritage site. In an attempt to preserve history, 2 exact replicas of the 50-foot arch that stood at the entrance to the temple will be erected in April 2016 in Times Square in New York City and in Trafalgar Square in London. Needless to say, a lot of people are quite disturbed by this. In ancient times, child sacrifice and bisexual orgies were common practices at the altars of Baal. And now we are putting up a monument of worship to this false god in the heart of our most important city. When I first came across this story, I could hardly believe it, but this is not just some internet rumor. And this was from the New York Times. And then I'll finish. Next month, the Temple of Baal will come to Times Square. Reproductions of the 50-foot arch that form the temple's entrance are to be installed in New York and in London, a tribute to the 2,000-year-old structure that the Islamic State destroyed last year in the Syrian town of Palmyra. The group's rampage through Palmyra, a city that reached its peak in the 2nd and 3rd century AD, enraged the world, spurring scholars and conservationists into action. Numerous non-governmental organizations are now cataloging and mapping damaged cultural heritage sites in the region. Today, I'll point out there was an article that they discovered a mass grave in this site. And there were, not in New York and London, but in Palmyra. And there were 42 at least dead, including women and children, and some beheaded, all tortured. So that was a horrible thing to hear come out of that. Yeah. Also, he pointed out in a subsequent article about this time in April, it's, a time of Baal worship and cult of Baal. It's never gone away. But a list of some things that have happened. April 19th, 1993, Waco massacre. And people who don't know, an FBI, this is under Bill Clinton, assault led to the burning down of the compound of a sect named Branch Davidians, killing 76 men, women, and children. I remember watching that happen on television. April 19th, 1995 was the Oklahoma City bombing, and 168 people were killed. April 20th, 1999 was the Columbine High School massacre. 13 people were murdered and 21 injured. April 16th, 2007 was the Virginia Tech massacre. 32 killed, 17 injured. And April 16, 2013 was Boston Marathon explosions, and 3 killed and 107 injured. So he asked, is it just a coincidence that reproductions of the 48-foot tall arch, and maybe you can come in with some additions, Zen, after this, that stood in front of the Temple of Baal in Palmyra, are going to be put up in the Times Square in New York City and Trafalgar Square in London, exactly 13 days before Baal's biggest day of the year. In the occult world, 13 is the number of rebellion, and these arches are going to be put on display precisely 13 days prior to the major occult holiday of Beltane on May 1st. In a previous article, I explained that the chief god of ancient Babylon, named Marduk, eventually came to be known as Baal or Bel, which both meant Lord. As worship of this ancient deity spread all over the globe, sometimes this language was retained, and this is definitely true when it comes to the Beltane or Beltane. Sorry. Beltane can be translated as Baal fire, and even many Wiccans acknowledge that this festival has origins which can be traced all the way back to the Baal worship of the ancient Middle East. And that is from today's article at End of the American Dream. So please do check out that series of articles. It's one of them about the gateway. That was very fascinating. So did you have something that you could add to that, Zen?
Yeah, commentaries, most certainly, which for those that are not students of Scripture, we don't realize how much the pagan nations and these pagan cultures, the ancient Egyptians, the Babylonians, worldwide, how much the establishment of altars and sacred places like groves and, altars and high places, sacrificial altars, how much that was reason for the Most High to separate Israel and to establish them as his chosen people in order to combat these pagan cultures and civilizations that did worship and practice really abominable things like child sacrifice and offering children on the heated up altars like Moloch and the statues that were made of bronze, and how they would have their hands out and they would heat them up to such degree and then lay these children on these really hot altars and basically just burn them alive and burn them to death as burnt offering. And the Israelites, they even fell away and several times got involved in such pagan practices, and for that they were punished greatly. And the Most High had warned them. Even in the scriptures, we have several, throughout the Old Testament, and specifically in the book of Leviticus and Deuteronomy and others, the mention and the warning to the Israelites to not participate, not to practice, and not to involve themselves, or even early on in intermarrying or mixing with the people of these other tribes and nations and peoples. And every time they did, they would be excluded, and also would be largely punished. And so much so that, the Most High would not even allow Israel to come into the promised land until those that were basically holding on to the Egyptian from being intermingled and intermixed through the 400 years of bondage and assimilation with Egyptian practices and pagan worship, to not inherit the promised land until all of them had died off. And then, with the new generation being raised that was witness to his relationship with Moses and the people directly, that he allowed them and raised them in purity to then inherit the land, the promised land, and took them into Canaan, and allowed Joshua and all the people to basically the slaughter and to wipe out the giants and the giant tribes and the peoples that were mixed with the sons of Anak, to wipe them out and to decimate them, and even told them to not spare any man, woman, or child, lest they, like leaven, would then basically corrupt Israel in intermingling with them. And we saw that did indeed happen. And then even after the people that were witness to the direct relationship with Yahweh Elohim, the Most High, and that saw the great and miraculous things that he did for them in leading them across the Red Sea, in parting the Red Sea and allowing them to cross over on dry ground. And people don't even realize that act was really repeated when they crossed over the River Jordan and entered into the Promised Land, that the waters were also stood up and parted, and they were allowed to cross over on dry ground. And they picked up 12 stones from the bottom of the Jordan River, and when they crossed over, they established an altar to the Most High God, and that altar stood as a place of worship and a place of remembrance to Israel as to what the Most High had done for them. And they picked up one stone for each of the 12 tribes, and then over, the next long period of time during the life of Joshua, he stood by them and helped them, assisted them in, wiping out these giant tribes and those that were, because the giants, they were worshipers of their fathers and the fallen angels, the pantheon of gods and goddesses, and they worshiped them in sacrifice and cannibalism, and also with the drinking of blood, and also these mass orgies, these orgic feasts, and just rampant sexual abomination. And so that was, these kind of rituals and rites that they had established amongst themselves was hated by the Most High God. And that's why he, in setting Israel apart, forbid them from repeating or being involved in such action. And so they did fall away after the people that were witnessed, the first generation that, went in and conquered the land of Canaan, and, all of that land was split up among the 12 tribes, except for the Levites, and their inheritance was from the offering of the 12 tribes, because they were the priests, and they were dependent on the goodwill and the offering of the people. But after that generation died away, they again had fallen away and intermingled themselves and taking up involvement in such rituals. And the Most High had warned them, even told Moses, and he prophetically warned them to not fall away, just as Enoch had warned the sons of Adam to not go the way of Cain, and yet they knew that they would. And same thing happened. Only Noah and his family were of pure in his generations, and that's why they were spared. But after Israel conquered the land of Canaan, they also fell away, got involved in pagan ritual, especially the sons of Esau, him taking on pagan wives, also the sons of Ishmael getting involved in these pagan practices and offering sacrifice of their children to the gods of Moloch, and the worship in the groves and the worship in the high places. And Josiah, the king Josiah, he actually destroyed all of the groves and all of these different worships, the worship places, and restored Israel back to their righteousness. But after he passed, then they again fell away. But a lot of times you will see in the stories of the patriarchs of old, like specifically with Job, and this is something that not a lot of people know about, especially those that don't read the extra biblical or extra canonical text. Job, there's a book called the Testament of Job, which people should actually read and study before the book of Job that is in the King James Version of the Bible, because if you read the testimony of Job, you'll learn and understand that God came to Job before his trial and before Satan began to persecute him, because he was specifically destroying the groves and the altars of Baal. And so the Most High went to him and told him that if you destroying these altars and these places of worship for Baal, Satan's going to come after you. And then the Most High told him, but if you stand firm and you continue doing what you do, he will persecute you, but afterwards I will reward you double, and I will bless you more than you are blessed even now. And so Job, because most people in reading the book of Job, they think that God was just having a contest with Satan and said, okay, well, yeah, go ahead and do what you will with Job. But he had warned Job prior and told him beforehand, before allowing Satan to come and persecute him in the manner that he did, in destroying his family and his wealth and his household, his children, but forbidden him from murdering him, and even his health and all that was tried and tested. But Job stood firm, and so that brings a whole different perspective, a whole different angle onto the whole story of Job. But you find that many of the patriarchs were involved in the destruction of Satan's altars and the groves where they were worshiping in that manner. And so it's a very important theme. It's something that is not practiced in modern times, and absolutely should be. I remember not long ago I was listening to a show. I believe it was Tim Bennis. Yeah, Bennis with Rob Skiba.
Yeah, the Canaanite altars. I was just thinking about
altars.
That. Yeah,
right. And he was in that show describing how that they were wanting to preserve this Canaanite altar as a historical site, and how things like that do happen. And even though, as far as like with ISIS, I don't support their destruction of, like a lot of these
antiquity.
And very ancient sites. But in the case of these Canaanite altars where blood sacrifice and the offering of children was done historically in context over much time, in those locations, and those kind of things absolutely should be destroyed because of the spiritual, demonic presences, that they release out into the world, and that those kind of things and places still affect humanity. And especially when they build, like I believe CERN was built on top of one of these old ancient, whether it was an altar site or I forget exactly. Wasn't an altar to Apollo or something of that nature?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And also Jekyll Island, where you just visited, that was built on an Indian burial ground. And that is a fascinating interview that Rob did with Tim, and I think it is Ben's, about that. And that's where they forged the agreement for the central banks, the Federal Reserve. So, and that's about ready to come crumbling down. I wanted to mention too, April 19th, I just heard this listening to Jim Willey, that there is a major occurrence in global economy. And I don't understand this, but I'll throw it out there. I'm sure people will. The gold fix, wait, here it says exactly. China is going to launch the yuan-denominated gold fix on April 19th. So that's going to have some major impact with the global economy.
I'll have to look into that too.
Yeah, I was meaning to look more deeply into it, but I did want to mention that because it's April 19th as well. And then just yesterday, I mean, talking about this going on, there are no coincidences. We know that.
Right.
And I believe that when I mean, my ears perked up the first mention I heard of ISIS, to me, that was not something related to Israel, Syria, in whatever it is. I used to know what that was, but to me, that was the Egyptian goddess.
Right.
Anyway, yesterday there was a nuclear summit and Obama was quoted saying madmen must not be allowed to get nuclear material. So you've got that going on the scene right now as well. And that brings to mind Jonathan Kleck's discovery on the American $100 bill, I believe, of a scene that showed, destruction in New York City. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of things going on supernaturally right now that we can see, we can recognize, and there are no coincidences. So this is happening. Pay attention.
Right. All right. We'll be right back, everyone. All right. Welcome back, everybody, for second segment. And I do recommend that people listen to the interview, the Canaanite altars. It's very long. I believe that in the several parts, it adds up to be like 4 or 5 hours of interviews. But I personally myself haven't listened to the entire thing as of yet. One of my listeners sent it to me on my Facebook page just a week or so ago, and so I have been trying to make it a point to listen to it. But what I have heard is absolutely fascinating so far, and people should be aware, as far as how to deal with these altars and these kind of sites, because it was so very important within the Word, and the Most High, told the patriarchs and prophets of old to do these kind of things, to destroy these kind of altars, and also, the people that were involved in such worship. But let me turn it back to you, Kathy.
Okay. Let me add to also on the currency. There's also a decipher or decoding of the currency that Jonathan Kleck, he has a YouTube channel, did with the Hoover Dam. There's a lot of stuff that you can find out about past events like Oklahoma City in 9/11, and then future events like the one I just mentioned about New York City, what you can see happening there, like a tsunami wave, nuclear event. So do check that out. I wanted to bring up a new blog that I've come across. It's called What Happened on the Flat Earth This Week. He's a busy guy, and it's WHOTFETW.com/blog. And there is a lot of really great stuff there. So check that one out. I don't know if you saw this one, but it's making the rounds right now. It's not flat Earth, but it's NASA's patented fake sun. It's a video that this person put out early last month. There's documents showing the patent of a star, and it's very interesting. And that is, if you just search NASA's patented fake sun. Oh, actually, I did really want to get you the channel on that. I think it's Richie. Here we go. Richie from Boston is the name of the channel. And he has a lot of links to the documents on that.
Any idea what that's about? Fake sun?
Star. I watched it through once. I need to watch things through a couple of times to really grasp what's going on. I've got so much in my head.
Yeah.
So like I normally do, I'm the gatherer of the links and I can point to stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know what's really going on there, but it has to do with, he was talking about the chemtrails and, there's a lot of talk that there's human bio mass that's included in the chemtrails. And, I don't know how that relates to the sun, but he was talking about a star that they had actually shown. Bausch and Lomb is involved as well. So I just point you to that. Go check it out. Rob Skiba mentioned it also on Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes. So I wanted to look at that a little bit more. I mean, these things is one rabbit hole after another, and I'm going down 15 at any given point in time. So I'm not doing anything special, but I just try to pull it together. Brian Mullen also came out with something, another thing that's above my pay grade, propulsion in space. And this is Balls Out Physics, episode 5.
I watched that.
Did you? Yeah, I did too. I really like the way he explains things, but still I'd have to watch it another time to get a handle on it. What did you think about that?
Of course, my forte is not in the engineering and the physics, but I like the way that he brings it down to a layperson's level and makes all of that as far as the formulas and all, because I don't have any understanding. Yeah, and makes it understandable, at least graspable, for those of us that are not physically inclined in such manner. And I was actually thinking, of inviting him to be a guest here on the show so we could discuss some of the things that he is talking about. But I think it's fantastic that he is devoting himself to introspection in such manner and bringing that whole kind of scientific physics, engineering angle to the discussion and to the deliberation, because we don't see a lot of that as far as the perspective of, doing things in the manner that he's doing, and he's, has broad appeal to those that are similar to him in mindset, and he is forcing them to consider those things that he's bringing forth. And so I think that's absolutely fantastic, and that we need more of that as far as being a movement, to be able to not only, appeal to those kind of individuals, but to get more of those kind of individuals involved with the discussion and the deliberation, to get them thinking about, well, why is it that, I support or believe in a ball earth or as far as a spherical earth? And, because really, even for those that are not physical PhDs or master's people, as far as physics and, science degrees, looking into that, you are forced to reconsider your beliefs, and so if we can get more of those individuals to reconsider and to have to reevaluate why it is they had once believed what they believed, and then to come to realization that, yeah, absolutely, the math and the science and the physics doesn't add up to actually supporting a globe Earth. And yeah, I think that would just be so greatly beneficial, and would lead even more, people to, as far as the PhD type people and science type Kenneth. People. Yeah, exactly.
I think Brian falls in between like Samuel Rowbotham and some of the, more detailed scientific explanation, and then some of the YouTube videos that are, more cavalier and comical, funny in their approach. And he does it, for the layperson. So, and he approaches the big questions, satellite, thermosphere, this propulsion in space. I'm going to have to watch that again, because I did just before, we got on. And he comes to the conclusion that, we're not living on a sphere, and there is no space like we know. And, I watch these science fiction shows, and they're always showing a rocket jetting off in space. And I'm thinking, how are they doing that? They're in a vacuum,
Right.
explain this. And they treat, there was a show, The Expanse, that was on. They treat space so casually.
Right.
They can just jump all around and go from one vehicle to another or walk around. And I think that's just to get our mindset to that level where, we think of it as, everything's possible with space rather than sharp boundaries and you're going to die.
Right.
So the Van Allen bell.
Right.
And Brian also mentioned a new channel for me, Droid Fuel. And he's also on the more of the technical end, but in a not really technical. He has great videos. They're shorter and they're those same subjects. He did one called Space is Hard, and that was what the Virgin Galactic. Who's the guy with Virgin Galactic? What's his name? Branson. It's Branson. Yeah. He ends with Space is Hard, and that's why they haven't been able to do anything in 16 years, but they're cash rich.
Right.
Yeah, and then he did another on the thermosphere, and then he did Evolution of Gravity. These are short videos. They're well put together. It takes a lot of time to do these things, but, it's telling a story, and just about anybody can understand it. I liked them a lot. So I highly recommend Droid Fuel, and look at all his stuff. Let me see. Another one, Chris Rock, who I like, he did one, satellite hoax, ground-based technology. And I also wanted to mention the last couple of days, I've seen more stories on satellites.
Awesome.
One was a gal had won $1 million to research a certain thing and using satellite images. And to me, these images look like they could have come from, some other source, but they're saying satellite. Everything is satellite. So she found some Viking village. And then a big story today is satellite images of the Nile River, and it looks like the Red Sea, because maybe they colored it red. I don't know, but it's in the news. It's all satellites all the time. And the last thing I really wanted to point to, this article I sent to you earlier, there has been one ChristianAnswers.net article in particular that people who want to say, no, flat earth is wrong. It's, not supported by the Bible, and this is why, and then they send you this. And it's one I found early on, and it really kind of got me going because I was picking it apart. Normally, say you encountered flat earth 5 years ago and said, well, I'm just going to figure out what's up with this. And of course we would have ignored it, but this kind of article would have popped up. And now looking at it, I can see the faulty logic behind how it's put together. And anyway, today, Philip Stallings, who I really like, he published an article that was a response to that. And I think it was much needed response. ChristianAnswers.net does the same thing that others do, and they approach it with the mindset that we live on a globe, we live on a sphere. I had looked yesterday, I wanted to see how someone would approach Joshua 10 and with the sun and the moon standing still. And I found an article at blueletterbible.org, and they did the same thing. He said, let me see right here. Okay, they assume a globe sphere, and then they proceed to pigeonhole, this is me, pigeonhole each scripture they encounter under sleights of hand like language of appearance. And I found it in this article, ChristianAnswers.net, as well as the Blue Letter Bible. So that's maybe something they teach at Dallas Theological Seminary. I don't know. But Christian Answers, what Philip is saying, you use it in one way and then you don't in another. He said, also, what is this language of appearance regarding the creation in Genesis 1? Are Adam and Eve literal figures which Christ acknowledged or are they figurative representations and products of evolution? would this same ministry acknowledge that the creation was done in a week as the Bible teaches? Or was it really over millions of years, according to the latest figures used by evolutionists? Was the virgin birth figurative? What about the flood, Noah's Ark, and the donkey that spoke? This position leads to the path of agnosticism and ultimately to position errancy and infallibility regarding God's pure and holy word. It's an excellent article, and it goes through every point that they had that so many people are relying on as an answer to the flat earth.
Do you by chance have the answer? And also know, Kathy, that we're in no rush. If we have to, continue on in the next segments, that we will do so. But do you by chance have the answer that the blueletterbible.org and the other one as to how they explained the sun standing still? Because, I covered that in my book, and I talked about how it doesn't make sense in the heliocentric worldview, because the Earth would have had to have stopped in its spin on its axis in order to prevent the sun from going down. But go ahead, please.
Well, I'll tell you why I was looking for it. I was listening to a particular person that a lot of people listen to, and another who is a big Planet X, 7X, there's the answer, researcher, and just casually saying, and then the earth stood still, or the earth stopped. And no, Joshua didn't say that. So I was looking this up, and immediately I found this, and this is just one paragraph of it, but it's responsive to what you asked. And he said, Joshua had no idea that his command slowed down 6.6 sextrillion, you gotta love that number, tons of spinning gravel and water to give Israel victory over her enemies. But Joshua did know something that God had revealed to him. Over 3,000 years ago, he said something that would have met the approval of today's scientific establishment. His command in the Hebrew language was not, "Sun, stand thou still," but "Sun, cease acting," or "Sun, stop working." It was then that the gravitational pull of the sun affected the earth. It was then the earth began to slow down and the day was lengthened. That's his answer. It's a long article, but there's a lot of stuff, I'd be throwing things at the monitor over anyway. I mean, there's just, gravity and the 6.6 sextrillion, there's all these things, and there's just no critical, that's the way they all think. You and I are the odd ones, hon.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I would like to see him try to explain the sun going back 10 degrees on the sundial in Isaiah chapter 38, because that one is even more complicated, because according to the heliocentric worldview, the earth would have had to have stopped and then gone back, spun the opposite direction, and then stopped again, and then commenced in regular spinning on its axis, spinning in the way that it normally does. And so all of that jostling would have created, just massive repercussions here on the earth, earthquakes, pole shifts, if that were possible, which it's not on.
How they address that? They go through these gyrations of how it wasn't the earth standing still, or how it wasn't, I'm all mixed up now, how it wasn't the earth standing still. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The earth wasn't moving. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
As far as keeping the sun from moving or going back on the...
Exactly. They go through all of that, but then when they come to the point that you just brought up, they say, well, if you believe in God, then he can do anything.
Right.
And I think that's how they did that here in this article at Blue Letter. So I'll be sure to send you that one.
Yeah. And there's, I remember reading in the, it was either in the Samuel Robotham, the book, the Zetetic Astronomy. Oh, no, actually it was in Terra Firma, where an individual was talking about a person that had spent a very long time trying to explain in some manner how it was that the story of Joshua, the sun, standing still and trying to apply that to the whole heliocentric worldview, and just for the life of him could not do it. And he was stuck on that and never actually finished his book where he was explaining all these supernatural events in the Bible. And that one got him, and he was stuck on it for so long that he was never able to complete his whole, explanation and trying to explain away that whole thing of how that occurred. And that happens just like with your mention of these two, the Blue Letter Bible, and what was the other one?
Philip Stallings. It's PhilipStallings.com. His latest article.
Okay, he wrote an explanation about how they were trying to explain it away, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And yeah, so many people, even like when we were discussing this on Facebook, that guy,
right.
Peter, and how he tried to explain this the same way. And he sent me a link to Chuck Missler, a video that Chuck Missler had done. And I guess he never even watched the video because there was no explanation about this. Just Chuck Missler had mentioned it in the video that he had done. But of course they can't explain this away because it just does not make sense according to the heliocentric worldview. You can't, if the earth stops, there's going to be massive repercussions, tsunamis, tidal waves. If it going from 1,038 miles per hour, in spinning on its axis to a complete stop in order to prevent the sun from going down. There are going to be massive consequences for such, for that happening. And yet there's nothing like that mentioned in the scriptures other than the sun stood still and the Israelites were able to complete their slaughter of the giant tribes that were in the land of Canaan. And then the whole thing with Isaiah in 2 Kings with the sun going back 10 degrees on the sundial, that is even more as far as the massive repercussions, lightning activity, earthquakes, storms, tsunamis. All kind of things would have occurred, and yet it was just nothing special, no mention of any kind of horrific atrocity taking place, nothing like that within the scriptures, which lets you know, once you come to understand that it is the sun and the moon which are in circuit, spinning in revolution above the face of the earth, as is mentioned. And I've read many times the many passages from even the book of Enoch and even like Ecclesiastes, chapter 1 from the Targum, all of those explanations which talk about that it is indeed the sun and the moon and these stars, the celestial and heavenly luminaries, which move in circle around Polaris as the center, the fixed star, and the central point, what would be the North Pole of the heavenly luminaries. And so, which the way the stars and the way that the star trails on time-lapse photography showing all the heavenly luminaries moving in circle around Polaris, all of that also is confirmation as to the circuits that the sun and the moon and the stars move in. And it shows us exactly what is happening, how they move, and how the Most High has established the heavenly luminaries in the firmament above the foundation of the earth as moving in circuit and circle like that. And so it's just visual confirmation of what we are talking about, and even what has been stated in Scripture with Joshua and also with Isaiah and the sun going back 10 degrees on the sun.
This was included in his article. You might find it interesting. It's a newspaper clip from San Francisco Call dated August 20th, 1893. And it's entitled The Shape of the Earth, Chicago Herald. As to the shape of the earth, the scientists differed. Of course, in extreme antiquity, everyone who thought about the matter at all believed the earth to be flat. Homer evidently regarded it of comparatively small extent, and he thought the ocean a wide stream which flowed around it. Of course, in his time, the earth was supposed to be the center of the universe, and the sun, the moon, and the stars were supposed to be large balls of fire a few miles up in the air, attached in some mysterious manner to the walls of the sky, which walls revolved around the earth, taking the stars with them. You're talking about the constellations, reminded me of this little clip. I like that. That's different.
It reminds me of something that Stephanie had posted on my wall, which I'll read when we come back from the next break. And it was a quote from Tesla, and he was talking about the earth and the stars and stuff as well. And also I'll try to pull up that passage from 1984 talking about O'Brien. Do you happen to have that quote available? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, I'll see if I can find that as well while we're on the next break.
From 1984?
Yeah, the book 1984.
What is the quote?
Something about, the way that the stars are. I'll look for it.
Okay.
All right. Hold on, Kathy. Stay with me. All right. Welcome back, everybody. A couple more things that I want to talk about. And I'm going to send you, Kathy, the link to a video that Jaron had did where he talks about the quote that I'm going to be reading from 1984. It's a very, very interesting passage. And let me see if I can find the portions of it here. Because it's kind of a long quote, so let me see if I can find the beginning of it. Okay. It says this. This is from 1984 by George Orwell. But how can you control matter? He burst out. You don't even control the climate or the law of gravity. And there are diseases, pain, death. O'Brien silenced him by a movement of his hand. We control matter because we control the mind. Reality is inside the skull. You will learn by degrees, Winston. There is nothing that we could not do. Invisibility, levitation, anything. I could float off this floor like a soap bubble if I wished to. I do not wish to because the party does not wish it. You must get rid of those 19th century ideas about the laws of nature. We make the laws of nature. But you do not. You are not even masters of this planet. What about Eurasia and East Asia? You have not conquered them yet. Unimportant. We shall conquer them when it suits us. And if we did not, what difference would it make? We can shut them out of existence. Oceania is the world. But the world itself is only a speck of dust, and man is tiny, helpless. How long has he been in existence? For millions of years? The earth, it was uninhabited. Nonsense. The earth is as old as we are, no older. How could it be older? Nothing exists except through human consciousness. But the rocks are full of the bones of extinct animals, mammoths and mastodons and enormous reptiles which lived here long before man was ever heard of. Have you ever seen those bones, Winston? Of course not. 19th century biologists invented them. Before man, there was nothing. After man, If he could come to an end, there would be nothing. Outside man, there is nothing. Hold on. For certain purposes, of course, that is not true. When we navigate the ocean or when we predict an eclipse, we often find it convenient to assume that the earth goes round the sun and the stars are millions upon millions of kilometers away. But what of it? Do you suppose it is beyond us to produce a dual system of astronomy? The stars can be near or distant according to as we need them. Do you suppose our mathematicians are unequal to that? Have you forgotten doublethink? The old civilizations claim that they were founded on love or justice. Ours is founded upon hatred. In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. Everything else we shall destroy, everything. Hold on, I think I missed a part. Let me go back just a little bit. Oh, wait, no, I didn't. I'm sorry. Okay. Everything else we shall destroy, everything. Already we are breaking down the habits of thought which have survived from before the revolution. We have cut the links between child and parent, and between man and man, and between man and woman. No one dares trust a wife or a child or a friend any longer. But in the future there will be no wives and no friends. Children will be taken from their mothers at birth, as one takes eggs from a hen. The earthly paradise had been discredited at exactly the moment when it became realizable. Every new political theory, by whatever name it called itself, led back to hierarchy and regimentation. Now, I think I'm skipping the part that actually mentions the flat earth. Let me see. Because I didn't want to read all this, but I apologize. I think I did miss the portion. But in it talks about how the stars are very close. If somebody is in the chat room and has access to that particular quote that I'm talking about, please send it to us so I can share it, because it is very interesting.
I found an article.
I'll read this. Let me see. And then I'll try to, because it is so fascinating.
I have it.
Oh, you do? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Can you please read it?
Yeah, I think so. Orwell knew these answers and gave a good accounting of them. Is that? Wait, I know from our.
It's an actual quote from 1984 between O'Brien.
As for the flat Earth theory, are they like talking back and forth?
No.
Well, it looks like it's pulled from that. Wait,
yeah, I know what you're talking about, but it's not the exact.
That's not
thing.
okay.
Yeah,
because it's this is George Bernard Shaw. Oh,
yeah, that's a different thing.
Looks like a good article.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll just read this thing from Tesla, and hopefully when I get, when I can locate it, we'll post it or share it the next time, because I wasn't ready. But it's a totally interesting account of what we're talking about, and maybe I'll be able to locate it. But let me find the passage as far as Tesla that my friend shared. I gotta go to my Facebook page.
The video that you were talking about, just in case someone wants to look that up, it's from Jeranism. It's titled "The Truth of Flat Earth in 1984" by George Orwell.
Yeah,
I haven't watched that one. I'll have to watch that.
Yeah, it's and I believe it was Jaron that I heard talking about this particular quote, and I have an image of it. I'll try to find it maybe in the next break and share it with people. But here's the Nikola Tesla quote that was talking about the same kind of stuff that we're speaking on. Earth is a realm. It is not a planet. It is not an object, therefore it has no edge. Earth would be more easily defined as a system, environment. Earth is also a machine. It is a Tesla coil. The sun and the moon are powered wirelessly with the electromagnetic field, the ether. This field also suspends the celestial spheres with electromagnetic levitation. Electromagnetic levitation disproves gravity because the only force you need to counter is the electromagnetic force, not gravity. The stars are attached to the firmament, which I've been working on my latest book, which is one of the reasons why I don't, listen to other people's works or, other radio broadcasts, because I'm so busy with my own stuff. But I'm working on a book about the firmament, and in talking about the Genesis, the order of creation, it mentions that the firmament was created on the second day. Of course, the earth was created as foundation for it. The firmament was fitted to it and spread as curtain above and abroad it. And it has solidity. The firmament is the dome casing of it, the vault of the sky there. It's solid. And in the ancient Hebrews, when they speak of the firmament, they are implying that it has a solid structure. It's a solid structure and has, firmness. Even the word firm as part of firmament speaks and implies being solid, and that the firmament essentially split and divided the waters above from the waters below. So in what you were talking about with Brian Mullen in his latest video, I believe it's number 5, that he did on propulsion, he talks about how in the heliocentric worldview and the postulations which are put forth by the astrophysicists and NASA and science, is that space is a vacuum, and that all of a sudden the atmosphere somewhere just ends as far as being above the earth. There's all these different layers, the thermosphere, the ionosphere, and all the other ones. I don't even know all the names of them. But at some point, the air and the molecules that create the atmosphere, they just end, and that there's no, what creates the separation between the vacuum in space and then the air of the atmosphere. And the way that Brian was talking about that, the space being a vacuum, it sucks out, or it sucks is what he said. And of course it was funny in the way that he brought it forth, but he was talking about how the reason that propulsion or jet propulsion, the reason that it can't work is because the whole basis of it, like a garden hose, with that has a spray nozzle on the end of it, is that the spray nozzle funnels the water into a smaller hole, and the velocity, because you have all the pressure of that water being funneled into a smaller and channeled into a smaller hole, it has greater velocity, which causes the water to spray out further and faster. And he says that the jet engine is built upon the same idea, that it funnels the air, and the air intake, it sucks the air in, pushes it and drives it into a smaller area, a smaller hole, which then creates the propulsion for the engine to lift, the plane into the air. And that's the way jet propulsion works. But if you had this kind of same thing, which they say that these are the kind of things that are attached to the space station, to these space shuttles, and to all of the rockets, which are, are up in the in space. They use these jets, these.
Then
Yeah.
I just looked this up, and I can't believe this is how they explain it. This is from Live Science, and they explain how rockets propel. Rockets and engines in space behave according to Isaac Newton's third law of motion. Every action produces an equal and opposite reaction. When a rocket shoots fuel out one end, this propels the rocket forward. No air is required.
Okay.
That answers it. When a rocket shoots fuel out one end. Have you seen that happen? I mean, I see that on the cartoon images they show or TV shows.
Right.
That doesn't even make sense. I expected to see, because I see a lot of people explain there's something that they do, but it doesn't explain it like that. And this is from Life Science.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. But they've got to make up something in order to explain the way that all these things are said to occur, because otherwise they would just be left in the dark as far as trying to deceive people into believing all the things that they're talking about out there, as to being able to go to the moon and all the things.
Well, we sure do accept a lot of things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
At their face value. I mean, there are so many things, and that's why people find it so hard to believe. And I understand that, but every single rabbit hole I go down, that there's a big lie on the other end, and I'm back to the Bible's true.
Right. Oh, hey,
without the machinations of men. Pardon me. Go ahead.
Right. I was just going to say, I think I found that quote that I was talking about from O'Brien, but let me finish just talking about what, as far as what Brian Mullen said about the jet propulsion and why he doesn't believe that it would work, is because he said that space as a vacuum, it sucks. So that if the jet propulsion, with the way that the jet's supposed to work in pushing out the airflow, or, in the case of a rocket engine, with the thrust from the fuel which is being burnt, and it's changing it, I guess the flame that's coming from the rocket, that is what creates the thrust. But anyways, in either case, as soon as the rocket, the flame from the rocket, which is creating thrust, or the propulsion, which is coming out of the jet engine, that instead of going in a straight line out of the exhaust and driving the space vehicle forward, it would immediately be sucked into all directions, and it would not be able to create lift or propulsion in one direction, because as soon as it left the exhaust, it would be sucked into all directions. And so, it wouldn't be able to control it, and it wouldn't be able to channel or to force, to be able to direct the energy in one direction, so that the space shuttle could, or whatever, craft, could be guided and directed in that way. But anyways, it doesn't make sense that even with the way that they talk about how the atmosphere has nothing keeping it contained, it should just be sucked out into space. But it's only because of the dome, with the firmament, that the atmosphere is able to that we are able to have an atmosphere, and that it is protected from the waters above. Because otherwise, in my opinion, it would be like we're in an aquarium, and that everything would be water, because there's waters above and waters below the firmament, and the earth was separated from the waters below, and the mountains were lifted up out of the waters to create the dry land, and then the atmosphere was put into place above the earth and within the enclosure of the firmament. And so it's like a snow globe, that's been created. Like if they were to create a underwater base, that it would have to be created in the same way. In my opinion, that creation was created by the Most High, because we are surrounded by water. There is no space, like a vacuum of space, like what science tells us, but there's waters above us and there's waters below us, and then the earth and the atmosphere that was created because of the firmament being put into place.
I did find what it was that I was looking for. The question was, how does rocket fuel burn in space without oxygen? And I was just saying vacuum. And the answer is rockets for outer space carry their own oxidizer. That's the answer I've seen given.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah.
So that would be a question for Brian. And
right.
Do you
yeah,
recall?
That's a good idea.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, let's contact him. You'd mind contacting him?
Sure.
And ask him that question, and then invite him to come on the show with us.
Okay.
Okay, great. And I'm going to go ahead and read this passage. I believe this is the one that I was talking about. It says this from 1984. This is the portion that I wasn't able to find earlier. It says, "But the whole universe is outside us. Look at the stars. Some of them are 1,000,000 light years away. They are out of our reach forever." And O'Brien says, "What are the stars?" said O'Brien indifferently. "They are bits of fire, a few kilometers away. We could reach them if we wanted to, or we could blot them out. The earth is the center of the universe. The sun and the stars go round it." And that's from 1984. Yeah, interesting quote, though, nonetheless, huh?
It said stars are bits of fire.
Yeah, I'll read it again.
Yeah, that was in that newspaper clipping I read too.
Oh, really?
Stars were supposed to be large balls of fire.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually in the part before this one. But let me see if I can find that part too.
I liked how it said, while walls revolved around the earth, taking the stars with them. That's interesting.
Okay, I'll just read that last paragraph again. It says, "What are the stars?" said O'Brien indifferently. "They are bits of fire a few kilometers away. We could reach them if we wanted to, or we could blot them out. The earth is the center of the universe. The sun and the stars go around it."
Did you happen to see? You probably didn't. I sent out a video today. There's a channel called CEEDEE, and he monitors the moon and stars. And today, he's got a very powerful telescope. Today, he had one that had Jupiter and then Sirius. And it was flashing, moving in all colors of the rainbow and white. And that's like that bits of fire. It was just fascinating looking.
Yeah, I like what he does.
This one of Jupiter was his best yet.
Yeah, I saw that one.
But at the end with Sirius, that was amazing. It
Right.
was kind of small, but it just, it was constantly moving in white and rainbow colors.
Yeah, and that to me, the work that he's doing is further verification of the Bible and the assertion that these stars and these planets, they're luminaries. They are lights. And when you look that up, that basically has nothing to do with terra firma or of any kind of similarity with that of the earth. They don't have, like they're not inhabitable, is what I'm trying to say. And so it's further just confirmation of the lights. Yeah. And also with what we were talking about, again, that whole postulation of the waters above and the waters below. The video that we were that I was looking for that one time, which showed the creation of light when you sent a sound frequency into an air bubble, and that it would collapse and it would create light. And that's exactly what the stars look like. And so, in my opinion, that the stars are, in some kind of a watery medium, and that's why they have the way that they look, according to even what CD and others are bringing forth with the way that they look, and they have that flicker, and they have these sacred geometric shapes. What were you going to say?
Have you ever read about the moon mentioned in the Quran? Because I was looking for moon stuff this morning. It mentions water, that some part of it is water. I'll have to find that today. Yeah, well, CD put out another one this morning, Light of the Moon in the early hours of April 1st. And I'm really, after this whole, it's self-illuminating. So I wanted to find the earliest mention, whose idea was this. And so I found some sites for the Quran, but I was looking for, something else. And it's Anaxagoras, brought philosophy and the spirit of scientific inquiry from Ionia to Athens. Anyway, he was the first to explain that the moon shines due to reflected light from the sun. They highlighted that, but then it goes on to say, he also said that the moon had mountains and believed that it was inhabited. They forgot about that, but he's our guy for the moon shines from light reflected from the sun.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was kind of interesting. Oh, okay, wait. And he explained that, though, both sun and stars were fiery stones. Okay.
Well, there's, quite a bit of material coming out. Even, I think lately, a lot of people, Rob and Brian Mullen and others have been showing how the moon's light is cooler. And even more so than the shade. Like if you pointed a temperature gauge, like one of those guns that tells you what the temperature is, they've been showing how the moon's light is cooler than even that of the shade. And so that is further confirmation that it's different in properties than the sun's light. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. Hold on, Kathy. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. I had planned on, and I was going to talk about Skyfall, which is my 7th book. It's called The Angels of Destiny, and it was focused on, I wrote it specifically to answer everybody's questions about pre-existence, pre-election, and our being predestinated. And Kathy, I want you to stay on with me here because I'm not going to go into a great bit of scripture in discussion of this topic in this show. I do promise, especially for those that came here and were expecting me to talk about this particular issue, I will do so in a follow-up broadcast. I did not want to skip over the news because those things I consider to be important, and I also think that the segments that I do with Kathy on current news and current events is very important in keeping the show dynamic. And so I appreciate everybody, those of you being patient with us, and also in listening to us in our discussions of particular topics and issues which are linked to, connected to the things that we often do talk about in different parts, different shows. But anyways, Kathy, I've never had chance to ask you about this particular topic, what you thought about it, and I'm sure you've heard me speak about it and present, because I've got so much information connected to this particular issue, which in my opinion does verify that we do and have pre-existed, and that we were angelic spirits before coming into the flesh, that we were spirits, and that when all of these spirits, all of the angels were created on the first day, that this included all the spirits that would ever be created, all of the angelic spirits, and that it's these beings that are put into the flesh and that are married to the flesh when conception occurs, when the parents, human parents, mother and fathers, the sperm and the egg unites, and they start splitting off into cells, that the spirit marries the flesh and then occupies the flesh and holds the body as vehicle for the lifetime that it dwells within it. But I just wanted to ask you what your opinion was about pre-existent, what you thought about it, because I know a lot of people do believe that this is, only a Church of the Latter-day Saints belief, which I do think that the Mormons got it right in this case, but it's not just a Mormon belief, that it is also connected to the secret teachings of Jesus, and the show that I did this past Wednesday, where I talked about all of the lost, forgotten, and forbidden books of the Bible. There's much that is connected to and that mentions and talks about our pre-existence that has been excluded and separated from the Bible. But that even in talking about this in my 7th book and as well as my 6th book, Sons of God, I established this premise from the foundation of the canon, and then go into explaining it with the many other verses and passages and books that I found, which also support it as premise. But anyways,
I do think what you said right there at the end about establishing it first from the canon, and then with the many texts that over time you have brought together, and then also leading from the first 2 books, it wasn't difficult for me to grasp. And throughout the times that I've been reading your books, I've had many moments of revelation. I've just, other than scripture, I've never had that kind of experience in my life where, I would just have a Selah moment, that word they use. Okay. And I've never had a resistance, and that's true of flat earth too. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I had to do something funny, but it brings it just makes sense. It answers the final questions that I might have, that, at time, throughout my early walk with the Lord, I didn't ask those questions. You go through the Western church in America and you don't ask any of the big questions. You're fed milk and you stay on milk through your life. The only reason I think that I went anywhere deeper was I started praying for meat, and I got it.
Yes.
But I tell you, your books answered the questions I hadn't even asked. It's like, Jesus singing the world into creation, the angels watching it and how they reacted. All of those things were so amazing to me. And then Skyfall is the culmination of this is who we were. And that, that God knew us, that he wanted us reconciled to him. And then this was the plan. And he knew, it's history. It's the entire thing pulled together, tied up in a bow by Zen Garcia through his dedication. And I'm so blessed by it. But, I see a lot of people who are resistant, but they don't know. They haven't looked at it. They haven't listened to a video or a program. It's like on the flat earth, there's just this natural I say natural, but it's something human, fleshly resistance that you don't know. And maybe you don't want to know. I don't know what it is, where I would be different and you would be different, where we would be welcoming to that. I think maybe it has something to do with, all of that you've been teaching. And I'm grateful that I don't put up that resistance, but bless her heart, my mother, who's in the next room, she would be aghast if she knew what we were talking about.
Right.
So, and I love it. I mean, there have been times that when I've been reading, because I kind of go through them, and read them again. When I've been reading, and I just think, how have I been so blessed to be privy to this information, to, that God would allow me and show me all of this that has to do with his creation. Because I believe that what you've brought forward is truth. Okay, maybe we're all wrong, but it makes sense to me. It makes sense in my common sense, physical way, and it meets me in my spirit, and I know it's truth. So, but when I meet the Lord and he tells me, when I learn, because I feel that there is so much that we're going to realize at that time that, oh, right. Now I see, that makes sense, of course. So, I just feel really blessed to have the information now that I have and can share with others. And, I see a lot of resistance, and it's sad. I wish people would, like Proverbs 18:13 says, to answer a matter before you know.
Yes.
Take the opportunity that it's there. It's a shame that your show doesn't get listened to more. And there are a lot of people that do, but it's a shame that there aren't a lot of people that know this.
Yes,
some of the people that have followed you and that, comment and that I see in different places talking about your work. I mean, they absolutely love it, and they've gained so much by it. And so I'd really encourage people to see if, what they think, to actually get the books and read the books and see what you think from there.
Yeah, because I know that I'm certainly not, I don't align with all of the mainstream teachings, that the things that I've come to learn and share as revelation are completely outside of the box, and they're a lot of what I teach is not well accepted or well studied, well understood. Like, and I take it all from the canon as foundation, as I said. And just to give people example, I'll share one aspect of my 7th book, Skyfall, the Angels of Destiny, where it talks about the Jacob I loved and Esau I hated, and how, in my opinion, this can only be explained when you understand that we were and have pre-existed, and that how we were during our first incarnation, our first and former estate, is how and what determined our election for this lifetime. And so I'll read 2 passages real quick, and then we'll talk about this. And then I'll do a follow-up show where I bring out all of the passages that I have which talk about this as premise. It says this from Malachi chapter 1, verse 2. I have loved you, saith the Lord, yet ye say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith the Lord? Yet I loved Jacob, and I hated Esau, and I laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. Whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord hath indignation. Let me read one more passage, and then we'll discuss this and how it is that the Most High could hate Esau. All right. It says this. Neither because they are the seed of Abraham are they all children, but in Isaac shall the seed be called. That is, they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God, but the children of promise are counted for the seed. For this is the word of promise. At this time will I come, and Sarah shall have a son. And not only this, but when Rebekah also had conceived by one, even by our father Isaac. For the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth. It was said unto her, the elder shall serve the younger, as it is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. What shall we say then? Is there unrighteousness with God? God forbid, for he saith to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. So then it is not of him that willeth, nor of him that runneth, but of God that showeth mercy. For the scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth. Therefore, last paragraph here, therefore hath he mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he hardeneth. Thou wilt say that unto me, why doth he yet find fault? For who hath resisted his will? Nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? Hath not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another unto dishonor? What if God, willing to show his wrath and to make his power known, endureth with much longsuffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction, and that he might make known the riches of his glory on the vessels of mercy, which he had afore prepared unto glory, even us whom he hath called not of the Jews only, but also of the Gentiles, as he saith also in Osee, I will call them my people which were not my people, and her beloved which was not beloved. And so this distinction between the children of promise and the children of perdition goes all the way back to the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. But even that, the enmity which would take place between these two bloodlines, these two seed lines, it has its roots, its foundation in the war in heaven. And this is the aspect that most people are missing and do not understand. And this is what determined our election. And that has to do with that we pre-existed as angelic beings in our former estate before the war in heaven. And that division, the war in heaven, and how people acted and whom they sided with, that is what determined election and whom and what we would incarnate into when we came into flesh form. And this is why Esau was hated. When he was not yet even a child, they had not yet even been born into world. How could God, a loving and a compassionate, a merciful, all-knowing God, hate a child that had not yet been born and that had not yet committed any kind of sin or done anything to deserve his wrath? As it says, for the children being not yet born, neither having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God according to election might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth. And so, again, it is election that determines whether we are born seed of the woman or seed of the serpent. And that election, as I stated, has everything to do with our former estate and how we were in our previous being as, again, the sons of God. Let me get you to comment on this, Kathy, and then I'll read one more passage, Psalms 82, which, in my opinion, lays this down, in one single passage, the whole premise of election, predestination, and our former estate, and having fallen, just as Christ said, remember from whence thou art fallen. Kathy?
So, the election, this was of our own will before the war in heaven?
Yeah, election in, whether we fought for God or decided to join Satan, or as most of us did, because most of the angels just sat on the sidelines. Many believed that Lucifer would succeed in overthrowing God because his glory and his appeal was so great that the angels thought that he had absolutely the chance and the might and the authority to overthrow the Father and the Son and to assume their position as God, and then make determination for what would happen according to creation. And so a lot of angels just decided to wait to see how the outcome, what would occur during the war in heaven, how it would play out before deciding who to worship and who to side with. And so that determined a lot of people's election for coming into the flesh now, because it's in the flesh during our incarnations into flesh form and living here in this time and this place now that we have chance again to redetermine what our allegiance will be, to either serve the Father or the Son. Except for this time, you cannot be lukewarm. You cannot sit on the fence, because if you do, you are counted with the wicked. If you just are sitting and riding in the middle ground, you're going to be counted with the wicked and spewed out of the mouth of the Son. Kathy?
So people who are Christians, like go to church on Sunday, I mean, they elected to come to this incarnation, but they are just not awakening. Is that what you would say is happening with them?
Yeah, I would say that most, because again, even they're being born into flesh and having this renewed chance, the elect is but a small minority, and most will not succeed even in this incarnation because they do not prioritize the kingdom, and they're not choosing to live for or to awaken themselves to their reason, their purpose for being here in flesh form. And that's why it says, away from me, you workers of iniquity, I know you not. When all of these Christians go up to Christ when he returns and say, oh, but Lord, I did this. I, fed the poor and I clothed the homeless and I did all these things in your name. And he says, away from you, you workers of iniquity, I know you not. Because most people are not prioritizing the kingdom. They're not living for their renewed chance of being in the flesh to determine their allegiance. And that's why they're falling short.
They're just asleep. I mean, they're just lulled into a complacency. I mean, they read the word. They may read the word every day and read what you were just saying, but they don't accept it and believe it. It's like they don't believe the supernatural. They don't believe in, I mean, they talk about the power of God, but they don't believe the power of God. They don't act on the power of God. None of it is really impacting in their life.
Right.
So, I mean, I try.
They're just going through the motions.
Exactly.
Yes. Yes, and that would be the problem. And that's why you can't do that anymore, because if you just do that, you're not going to just get by. This lifetime is for reason and purpose. And that reason and purpose is to realign and, give our allegiance to the Most High God, to come to know His truth, to study His Word, and to understand our purpose for being here and what all of this is about. Because this lifetime and the trials of life, the duality, the tests, the trials, the tribulations of coming and being exposed to both good and evil, that duality, that is the test. And all of that is for trial of soul, trial of spirit. It's to, for us to come to know who really God is, that He sent His Son to die for us, to bring us back to remembrance, to provide us an example of why it is we're here, and so that we do not succumb to death, because He is our way out. Salvation is through Him, and that, He showed us that He and those that believe on Him, and that He died on the cross for us, that salvation is through Him, and that He is the way and the truth and the life. And this is the truth of the gospel that we are to come to know. And we do not have excuses, because we have a whole lifetime to come to this understanding, to come to this truth. And the gospel is there, and it's available for anybody in the world, anywhere you are, especially now with the availability of the internet. And that includes all of the books. Final comment, Kathy.
Yeah, absolutely. And to follow Christ in love and forgiveness. I'd really recommend folks see this movie. I just watched it, Jesus of Nazareth. It's from the late 70s. There was not a better example of Christ in a movie form that I've ever seen. It just brought me to tears many times, and I just would highly recommend that to anyone.
Well, awesome. Well, I won't be able to read Psalms 82. We're going to run out of time, but I will open the following show. Next week, Dr. Joy will be joining us, and then we might have a guest the week after that. But the next show that I do on this issue, I'll open up with Psalms 82. I'll start from the Bible as foundation, and then I'll go into all of the other material that I have, which confirms this as premise. Remember, it's only by election that you can understand and explain why Esau was hated. Otherwise, it makes God sound like just a homicidal, genocidal, schizophrenic God. Because, what makes one child to be favored and the other to hated? It doesn't make sense unless you understand what I'm talking about. God bless all. Good night. Good night, Kathy.
Good night. God bless you.
God bless you too, sister.